Warning, some topics in this video may be triggering to some. Viewer discretion is advised. I have had a couple of people ask me to share more of mine and my family's paranormal experiences that happened during our time in Occult. So here it is. Sorry, this is a long one. Very soon after getting involved with the cult, paranormal encounters started happening in the home. And when we moved to the same town as the leaders, even more started to happen. I will list the ones that occurred when we were completely awake. I do believe people have encounters between sleep and awake. My sister used to get sleep paralysis all the time, but to keep this from being longer than it already is, I will share only those experiences. I have already shared 2 experiences to this subreddit that happened to me during that time. The first was when my friend and I saw 2 small beings coming out of a field at 3 a.m. in long brown robes with bald heads, identical to each other. The second experience was when another friend and a fellow cult member and I saw a large being that was blacker than black, and it flew over our heads. It was formless and about 8 to 9 feet across. When I say formless, I mean it had no distinguishable features, no head or eyes or arms or legs. This happened in the alleyway between our house and the cult leader's house. Another experience I had was a little different to those. During our time in the cult, the leaders decided I should move in with them. They had 5 teenage girls living there at the time. I was one of them. One evening, I was doing my homework on the kitchen table with the same friend who saw that flying black creature with me. Suddenly, out of nowhere, my back started stinging, and I mean really burning stinging. I was irritated by it, and I was trying to reach around and feel what was going on. Finally, after a minute or so, I asked my friend to have a look, as it was really bugging me. I roll up my shirt and she stares at my back in confusion. I ask her what she sees, and she tells me I have 3 long scratches down my back. They look like cat scratches, but much too big to be a cat scratch. The scratches were spaced apart too wide to be a cat. They also didn't have a cat anyways. She seemed quite freaked out by it, so I go to the bathroom to view it myself. They are pretty much center down my back and also behind my bra strap. No way that I can reach that. I wasn't worried at the time though. I just figured it had happened somewhere earlier, and I was only feeling it then for some reason. Then this happened again. A couple months later, approximately, I was playing a computer game at the desk in my room that me and 2 other girls shared, when I felt that stinging, burning sensation again, exactly like before. Again, I try to reach around and feel what was going on. I go to the bathroom and lift my shirt. I see 3 scratch marks, very similar to the ones before, but not quite as long and a little off to the side this time. I was a little worried this time, but told myself it must be something to do with the clothing I'm wearing. I put it out of my mind and never thought about it until years later when I heard about this phenomenon happening to many others. The next one happened before I moved out. My sister and I were in the room in the basement. It was late morning. Next to her room is a utility room, and then the stairs going up. Her bedroom door was closed. We were just chatting and hanging out in her room. When we were about to go upstairs, when out of nowhere we hear this growl roar coming from the utility room area. It wasn't like any growl I can explain. It wasn't like a dog growl or a big cat growl. If I had to describe it though, It had that deep, low sound of a large cat like a lion or a tiger, and it had a similar volume to a large cat as well, but maybe closer to a bear as well. It's so hard to explain. When I first heard it, I was so confused and immediately frightened. My mind was racing, wondering how on earth I was hearing what sounded like a wild animal in the house. We didn't have a dog either, by the way. Then my mind went to, it must be someone walking a large aggressive dog outside, even though it didn't sound like a dog, and the sound was carrying through the walls very weirdly. I was just trying to make sense of it. Something primal inside kicked off, I think, because I became filled with dread. The growling got louder, and it sounded like it was making its way towards her door. I looked to my sister with panic and see that she is frozen on the spot. Her face was filled with fear and also confusion. I remember actually wanting to escape out of her bedroom window at that point. My sister told me to stop and be quiet, but I couldn't. The growling was getting louder and closer and seemed to be right outside the door now. I couldn't just do nothing, so I started screaming for my mom, just calling out to her over and over. The growling immediately stopped when I did that. I keep screaming for a minute or so, then I stop. We listen. There's no growling anymore. It's totally silent. My heart is pounding. I tell my sister we have to run out. She tries to stop me, but I open the door anyway. I quickly look around. We don't see anything. So I race upstairs with my sister right behind me. We run to my mom and tell her. Another incident that happened involved a time, again when I was in my sister's room. I had decided to sleep in her room that night. We had just gotten into bed and were talking. Almost as soon as our conversation ended, when the room was totally silent, a voice from the end of the bed broke that silence. It was a loud whisper, and it said my name as clear as day, just my name, nothing else. I couldn't tell if the voice was male or female. It was just a very loud whisper. I immediately grabbed my sister and said her name. I was totally freaked out. She responded right away and said, "I heard it." I was so terrified. I clung to her, trying to process what we heard, what could be the possible cause. She said we mustn't give it any attention. I couldn't stay there though, so I got up to get a glass of water to calm down. I slept on the couch that night. I was absolutely terrified. I'll have to do another part next week, as I am worried this will be too much to post in one go. A few days back, my best friend died by suicide. She was in depression and stress due to an unhappy marriage. I had not spoken to her for 2 months and used to just watch her stories and statuses online. For a few nights, I was dreaming about her, about all the shenanigans we used to do. On the day she died and the time she died, I was sitting in my office, and suddenly I started to get breathless, like I was not able to breathe, and I became all sweaty, and the feeling was for almost 20 to 30 minutes. I had to leave my office and sit outside in the open area, but still I was not able to breathe. It was cold and raining, and it's a high altitude, but I am used to the weather conditions. Next day I received the call from one of her brothers that she had passed away by hanging herself at the same time when I had that feeling. It was a surreal thing. Even to think about it now gives me goosebumps. Before this event, I was an atheist and did not believe in paranormal phenomenons. So back in roughly fall/winter of 2016, when I was still living with my mother, I was asleep in my bed and I had a lamp on next to me. My bed faces a wall and my door was on the right side of the wall. Sometime during the night, I randomly woke up. I was 100% awake and conscious, not imagining things. And in front of me, standing at the wall facing me, was what seemed like a tallish woman. I'm pretty blind without my glasses, so I couldn't make out much of her features except she was very dark, and my lamp didn't light her up, which lit up the rest of the room. Then I called out, "Mom?" to the figure, but it did not respond or move, and I know it was nobody that lived in the house with me. So I was freaked out with no response, and I turned my head into my pillow and closed my eyes for maybe a minute. Then I looked back and the figure was standing right at the foot of my bed, pretty much right over me. So I got a glimpse of it. Can't remember any features, but then I put my head right back into my pillow and fell asleep. Quite fast, surprisingly. Then I woke up normally in the morning, and everything was as usual. I don't know what I saw that night. I have thought about it almost every day and night for the past 6 years. Nothing has happened since that has horrified me that much. I still have no answers to what it might have been or if it did anything to me. I ask for any and all explanations for this frightening occurrence. Hi, this is my first Reddit post. I'm going to tell you about something that I witnessed and still haunts me to this day, which happened in 2011. I just want to give you a little context before I tell you about what happened. I was the student nurse at the time, in my final year at university. It was 2011. I am from Scotland in the UK. Sadly, life hadn't been treating me great that year, from having financial issues, like most students, to ending things with my boyfriend, moving back into my mom's house, etc. My mom sadly has severe bipolar disorder, and living with her again just got too much for me. I was caring for her, attending uni, working, doing hospital placements, and studying. Also, my little dog had cancer, and I had to deal with her care as well as my mom's care, all on my own. My 2 older brothers never helped. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore, and I had a total emotional breakdown. I want to state that I don't have any psychiatric problems or take substances. I also wanted to mention that I grew up around the occult, but was raised a Catholic. This is where the story begins. My aunt, who was a witch and a medium, was always like a mother to me. During my crisis, she took me in and let me stay with her, her hubby, and my cousin. Let's call my cousin N. My aunt's house was mansion-like, a huge house with private gates, etc. When you would go into my aunt's house, myself and others would always feel something present, an aura or energy. Sometimes it would feel very negative and stifling, but usually it was fine. As my aunt was a witch, I learned from her. I practice Hermetic Kabbalah, and although not a medium, I am an empath. In her house, I always knew that the energy was spirit, and I never let it affect me. My cousin N was a total rebel, wild child. She would go out in her car and vanish for hours on end, getting up to no good, I'd imagine. One particular night, there was a full moon. It was after midnight, and I recall being so mesmerized by the glow and beauty of the moon. In the room I was in, there were binoculars, so I decided to moon gaze out of the window for a bit. It was beautiful and really grounding. Definitely made me feel at one with the universe. After 10 minutes or so, I hear a car. It was my cousin In. I heard the electric gates open to the driveway, and me being nosy, I decided to aim the binoculars at her car to see what she was up to. She had a look of sadness in her face. FYI, in the UK, the driver's side is the right-hand side. As she was pulling into the driveway, I tried to keep my focus on her inside her car. I noticed another girl sitting on the passenger side. She was very pale with jet black hair, pretty and quite slim. She was looking at my cousin, smiling in a way that seemed caring but analytical of her somehow. My cousin never looked at her at all, which should have been a red flag for me. I just assumed that the girl on the passenger side was a friend, and she was just dropping her off. So I got bored with the binoculars and decided to put them down and wait for my cousin and her friend to come in so I could chat with them, as I couldn't sleep. My aunt and her husband were asleep. So I hear the door open, and my cousin comes in. As she was coming up the staircase, I whispered out her name to come into my room with her friend. She was very confused when I said that and exclaimed, "What are you on about? My friend, no one was in the car." She came into the room anyway, and I shut the door so we could chat about life, etc. She asked me again, "What are you talking about regarding her friend?" I said, "Who was the girl in the car with you? Are you winding me up? Is she downstairs or did she go home?" The next thing, my cousin totally freaks out. She went mega pale and started shaking. I was so confused, and I asked her why she was acting that way. My cousin said, "Tell me you're joking. Tell me no one was in the car with me." Initially I said, "But your friend was clearly in the car with you. She smiled at you and even looked my direction. I saw her face as clearly as I see yours now." At that point, my cousin started to cry, and then she screamed that she was alone. That's when it clicked that I must have saw a spirit. Anything supernatural freaks my cousin out. I guess growing up with a medium as a mom always made her scared of these things. My aunt woke up and came into the bedroom to find out what all the noise was about. My cousin was so upset with me and was calling me a liar, telling me to leave her alone. No one was in the car except her, and that I was making it up, etc. To be completely honest, I was just shocked at the way she was behaving, as I had no reason to lie. I made it very clear to my aunt that I saw the girl next to her. There was no way that I was seeing things. Even now, as I recount the story, I can see the girl's face ingrained into my memory. My aunt quietly told me to tell my cousin that I was just making it up, as to calm her down. So I did. I knew what I saw, but I told her I didn't see anything. I wasn't happy about it, but at least it calmed her down. My aunt then told me I had to tell her everything that I saw, so I told her everything that I had mentioned in the past. My aunt advised me to send love to the girl I saw and pray for her. She absolutely believed me. My aunt was a very intuitive woman, and I remember her telling me that she believed me and that she had sensed a similar entity with my cousin before. She just never seen her. When I described how the girl looked, my aunt knew straight away who she was but wouldn't tell me. I think it was a spirit protecting my cousin. As you can gather, my aunt passed away sadly. She died in late 2011. Remember, I told you my aunt was intuitive. 2 weeks before she died, she told me calmly that she didn't have long on earth, but not to worry. I told her to stop being so melodramatic, as she was fit and well and only 50. But she was so right. 2 weeks later, she passed away in her sleep. To this day, I think about that girl and wonder who she was. My cousin and I don't talk anymore, as I hated the way she treated my aunt. I will always feel a connection with my aunt. I know she is there in spirit, in the universe watching over me. I definitely saw a ghost or spirit. What do you guys think? I have so many more stories. Like I said in the beginning, I grew up learning about the occult, experiencing things from the age of 4. I hope you guys enjoyed this story. Sorry if I ranted too long. Love and light to you all.